let me explain. That's probably going to be the title of this video, but let me attempt to maybe express myself a little bit better in my viewpoints around the whole bike situation in 3.0 and my thoughts on the bike situation, and also like attempt to maybe clarify and maybe even roll back certain things I said to a degree, because I do think some of the criticism in the comments on my video have been entirely fair, but I just want to point this out. I saw this on Twitter and I thought it was actually funny. Bait used to be believable. Believe it or not, I'm not actually baiting with my points in that video, although they might have been terribly put across. But I'm going to attempt to clear that up in this video. But let me just show you this. Do the areas look visually pleasing? Yes. Which in parts I do. Designed well. Not personally, but that doesn't mean that.
I don't think they're designed well. Not personally. I don't think they're designed well. Okay. Hold on.
Okay. It looks really nice, right? I love the colours. I love the design. I've got to admit, it's kind of funny, right? But let me just try and clarify what I was saying there. Is there's parts of the map that look gorgeous, because Kuro do pretty stuff. There is parts in their own individual areas look gorgeous, but when you put it all together in terms of the level design for me, I'm not a big fan of that. I expressed that badly. I basically said, do I like some of the designs? Yes, but no. And then yes, I mean specifically regarding the actual map itself. That's where I start to get critiques with the design and have issues with the design so much. It's not so much the map looks ugly. It's just that when it all comes together in terms of a place to interact with, I have negative perceptions, if you will, right? They are my own personal subjective takes, which again, I'm not hiding behind that. I saw a lot of people saying, you can't just hide behind subjective takes and think you won't get dragged. Well, of course, I'm not going to try and pretend my subjective takes are objective. I'm not trying to tell you the facts here. This is just my opinion, right? So let me attempt to clarify why I take issues with the bike itself, and I guess the power of the bike is what I've got an issue with, because I did say in the video as well, well, the things look cool with the bike, and then I don't like the bike itself within the game. It's more the implementation, so let me clarify that. The bike and vehicles in these sort of games are not an issue. It's the implementation for me and what it reduces in terms of actual enjoyable friction within exploration in a world for me, which we'll get into in a second. But I also just want to point out two posts here that I'm going to quickly go over as well. I think this is one, somebody posted, a couple of people posted this in my Discord. I think this is from, well, it is from Cap's channel. And this is somebody saying, I remember this guy was humbled when AK devs addressed the same topics he tried to argue with to another AKCC. Not true. He's also been extremely negative about Wuthering for a long time now. Partially true. It's less that I've been negative about it for a long time. I've just had issues that I'm not so positive about with Wuthering Waves, and the content that I have made, which is few and far between, it's had a bit more of a negative outlook. Fair. I glazed the game for like a year though, but none of that matters once you've said a few negative things to people. So, okay. And he liked the HSR fake collab. Not true. Didn't play it. Don't know what the fuck this person's smoking. I maybe like everybody else, I thought it was cool, it was happening, and then it happened, and we all know how that went. So that's just not true. I'm just stating what I know from him. So, and you can produce your own opinion. Well, of course you're going to produce a biased opinion when someone's saying shit like this, and Cap replied to me saying, oh, but whatever. I don't mind about that. And then we got somebody here saying, Pixel Tree is the same guy who reacted extremely negative to another Arknights Enfield's creator's video being critical of Enfield. Everything that creator said was true, as the devs later addressed everything he critiqued, resulting in Pixel Tree looking like an idiot that blindly glazes Enfield and ignores all its problems. I have been critical of the Dodge since the first CBT. I said it was incredibly inconsistent and it needed to be improved upon. And I had no issues with the introductions of blueprints and a bunch of the other stuff. I think the game's only got better in regards to the combat. And in regards to glazing it, I do glaze it, not blindly. I've got issues with the gacha pull acquisition within the beta, and I've got worries about potential endgame and events and stuff like that within the game. I also do like the gacha, but the gacha mathematically is better. I'm sorry to say, but if you go pull for pull, band for band, it's a better gacha. Now, if you want pity carryover, then it's not. But in terms of raw pull, the maths backs it up. Run your own simulations if you don't believe me, and you'll see the math actually backs it up as a better gacha system. We're going for first-time characters, clearly better, and even in regards to dupes as well. And the Arsenal tickets just seals the deal. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that, but I just wanted to clarify those two posts. Now, let me go on to another point that I made, because I kept saying this doesn't look like Wuthering Waves, which I think is something I'll roll back because I haven't played the game since 2.2. So in regards to this area now not looking like we were is a fair thing to say. What the fuck are you talking about, bro? You're not really playing the game. The game, it changes and adapts, and we've seen it grow. So I think that's fair. But I suppose it all came from this, right? It all came from this image from the stream. And it was this, really, because all I could think of when I saw this was this. And I just think this looks more like this than this looks a lot more like Wuthering Waves, right? So, but I did repeat it a couple of times, which I think is fair. I'll take that back. It does look like Wuthering Waves, right? Because it fundamentally does if you look at it. But I guess I took that and I rolled with it a little bit, which I'm cool with taking back. Now, in regards to does it feel like Wuthering Waves, I've got reasons for why I said that, and I'm going to explain those now. So I'm going to get into it. I've got a few bullet points because people keep saying, dude, get a couple of bullet points just to try and keep yourself on track. I like to yap a little bit. I very rarely make scripts for videos because I just don't care to, if I'm honest. I just like to talk about video games and express my opinions. But I also know expressing your opinion gets you dragged in this space because it's incredibly highly strung. And I know that I express my thoughts very poorly within the video. So let's get into my thoughts on the bike system then, shall we? Okay, I just want to go through some of these bullet points, and I just want to specify as well, this doesn't just relate to Wuthering Waves. It relates to all gacha games that are open world games based on how Wuthering Waves is based. And what I mean by that, it's not a sandbox game. Now, you might say with the addition of the bike, they're attempting to do sandbox things, and I think, okay, that might be a fair take, right? But it's not a sandbox game in the sense of something like Grand Theft Auto or Far Cry 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2 or even games like Saints Row 2. They're sandboxes that you can have hours of fun without doing any exploration, without doing any of the story, just getting up to no good, and you can have hours and hours of fun in that regard. Now, with a game like Wuthering Waves and Genshin and even Enfield, the exploration is around 1, story beats, right? And 2, collecting stuff. Now, you might not like collecting stuff, but I actually kind of enjoy collecting stuff. I like a reason to go through the open world. So let's talk about why I think that the bike might reduce that. I also want to say as well, games that are designed from the ground up with vehicles in mind tend to balance it a little bit better. Like in Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead, Saints Row 2, it feels just as good on foot as it does in the vehicles because the whole world is designed around that. It's designed to feel just as fun and immersive, whether you're on foot or whether you're in vehicles. And because it's a sandbox, extra utility really doesn't change the exploration experience because, as I say, it's a little bit different. But let me explain why I think the bike might, for me personally, reduce my personal enjoyment of exploring a map. And this goes to Renacita as well. I loved Renacita when it dropped. But when they added in the flight, I liked it at first. And then I started to think, okay, this is making the world not seem so interesting for me. And I've got a few reasons why. So, on paper, moving faster sounds great. You get places quicker, traversal feels more efficient, and it's easier to label that as a straight quality of life improvement, which a lot of people have done. A lot of people are saying, well, this is a good QOL improvement in regards to getting stuff within the world. I'm not denying it's not, but for me, I don't want exploration to be a quality of life experience. I want it to be an experience. And that goes into, it's not just about getting from point A to B. It's kind of about what happens in between those points for me. Now, it might not be for you, and maybe Wuthering Waves isn't the game if I want that, but I was kind of hoping it was going to be that, because in 1.0, it kind of was that. So this kind of goes into when I say it doesn't feel like Wuthering Waves in that regard anymore. Renacita added that sprinkle of separating the way I liked exploration, and it looks like the vehicle's going to do it even more because it's going to really change the horizontal design of the map. Of course it's going to, because it's got to facilitate the bike. But again, I'm not a fan of that. So when a game gives you strong speed-focused utilities like bikes, mounts, or other fast travel tools, it subtly changes the way you engage with the world. We know this, right? That's not a hot take. You stop exploring the space and start skipping it. And I've had so many comments of people saying that, where they're like, well, I ain't got the time to that. I just need to get my stuff and get on with stuff. Fair enough. You can have that opinion. I'm not saying you can't. But again, it just goes to the thing what I was saying about it. I want to explore. I want to explore the space. And I feel like Kuro are giving me less reason to, personally. The world becomes something you pass through instead of something you exist in, which I think that's a fair take personally. You might not agree, but I do. I felt like 1.0 felt like a world to exist in, where 2.0 felt a little bit more like a world to pass through. Not quite as much as what 3.0 looks like. 3.0 looks definitely like just a world I'll pass through that I won't want to exist in. Maybe you disagree with that, but that's how I feel. A lot of satisfaction in the exploration comes from scale, pacing, friction, walking, climbing, and navigating terrain on foot forces you to notice landmarks, level design, enemy placement, and environmental storytelling. I think 1.0 had all of that personally. Maybe not so much about like enemy placement and stuff, because it's not like you were playing Assassin's Creed where you were scoping out a location to take over or something like that, right? But in regards to like navigating the terrain and friction as well, for me, is a big satisfaction part of exploration. It goes back to older games. Imagine playing a platform game where there's something to get. The game just allows you to swoosh past it and suck it up. I don't want that. I want to have to go get it, because I get the satisfaction in going and getting it. And 1.0 had that. Enfield kind of has that. And I also want to say, I'm not pitting Wuthering Waves against Enfield. Like, that's just dumb. Just because I've got some negative opinions of WoW and I like Enfield, I'm not trying to do that. If I did that, I'd make Hoyo content and shit on WoW, or I'd make WoW content and shit on Hoyo. That's the way to do PvP, because they're the two communities that are at each other's necks. But I just think I want a reason to go and explore. I want a bit of friction, and I want a bit of satisfaction from doing it. And I think Enfield does a little bit of that. Now, I'm not saying that once you've collected all the stuff, the world won't feel less interesting, because again, it's not a sandbox. It's an exploration world, just like Wuthering Waves is, right? So I just want to add that. So when movement gets too fast, those little details lose their impact. You don't stop to look at scenery. You don't naturally discover things. You're just moving through empty spaces as efficiently as possible. And when you've got a bike, and we can see from the map, it looks like there is a lot of empty spaces. You might like that. And a lot of people say, well, just get off the bike, bro. What is there to do in those empty spaces? Am I able to have sandbox fun? No, I'm going to collect an item, so I'm not going to get off the bike, am I? I'm going to use the bike to get there. Otherwise, it's just a less fun version of traversing that space. And it doesn't just affect the player, it affects how the world gets designed. Of course, the world gets designed around the vehicles, and sometimes that can be done really well, and sometimes not so much. From what we've seen, there's parts of the world, for me, you might disagree, I don't think have been designed well. This goes back to what I said about Legion's Pulse. There's parts of the game where I'm like, I like the design, but then when I look at the actual world itself in this region, I'm not so much of a big fan of that level design itself. So if developers know players can move quickly, environments have to stretch to compensate. We've seen that over the years of open world games. Just Cause was a perfect example of that. Even though that was a bit more of a sandbox game, the maps become too big at points just to facilitate huge vacuous places with POIs in between them. And that is the thing that obviously devs are going to react to. That often leads to larger, emptier spaces designed to accommodate speed instead of density, which is what I was talking about in the video when I was talking about I do prefer denser, more interesting, layered, explorable areas, right? Not just little cinematic areas and then big open areas that really don't have much to them. I like a bit of density when I'm exploring. I want a reason to explore. This goes back to what I say again. The bike, for me, starts to remove some of them. You might disagree, and you might just like the bike. Cool. The result is a world that feels wide, but not rich. It goes back to that point that I made before of being really wide, but not being exactly deep, being a little bit shallow. And this is where speed utility starts to work against exploration. The faster you move, the less meaningful each individual location becomes. Distance stops feeling intentional and starts feeling like filler. I've played so many open world games where they're designed for specific vehicles within the world. Again, over the years we saw developers advertise how big their map was, and it never meant it was better. It just meant there was massive areas where there was nothing to do other than travel between two points of interest. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. The problem is when speed becomes the default. To me, the game stops encouraging curiosity and it encourages efficiency, which some will say for a game like Wuthering Waves where collecting things can be a chore for people, that's a positive. But I want Kuro to make collecting things an enjoyable thing. I don't want it to be a chore. Now, you might see it as a chore, but me, when it comes to open world games, the exploration shouldn't be seen as a chore. Because then, fundamentally, if it becomes a chore, I think you've kind of failed at what you set out to do in designing an open world. Because at that point, why is it even open if using it or being in it is a chore? And I think that's a fair thing to say as well. But exploration ultimately is about discovery, which I think you lose a little bit. Immersion, which I think with all the stuff that the bike's got, the barrel rolls and all that sort of stuff for me personally, it makes me lose a bit of the immersion. And pacing as well. When everything is designed around moving fast, you lose the slow moments that make exploration memorable in the first place. There's a whole bunch of reasons there why, for me, when it comes to the design of the new area, it loses, or it looks like it's going to lose a lot of those reasons to want to explore personally. I spoke about sandbox games. When you've got games like GTA, let's take Red Dead Redemption, for example. Being on foot is much slower to get to places in the game. But when you're on foot, you encounter so many things. The world is so rich and deep that sometimes you're happy to just wander off into places because it breeds that curiosity, and you might end up finding some crazy stuff in the woods. We all know what I'm talking about. Or getting into some crazy wild shenanigans side quests. Witcher 3 is a perfect example of that sort of stuff as well, because somebody did make a comment about, well, when you've stopped collecting things in open world games, they become empty anyway. I disagree. There's a lot of games that make sandboxes enjoyable, but this is why I go back to Wuthering Waves isn't a sandbox, and that's why speeding everything up with utility makes me burn through the things that are fun about exploration, and then I end up with nothing to do. And I've seen so many people say, well, just get off the bike then. As I say, well, if I'm just going to collect stuff on flat open terrain, that's not a fun time. Now, if it's some cool stuff to climb, then I'll do that because that sounds interesting. But just walking across a big open space for the sake of walking across a big open space because somebody says, well, if you don't like the bike, just drop the bike. It just doesn't feel like a fun time, that doesn't, because the map's been designed for the bike, which I've saw a lot of people get really angry about that I'm saying, well, the map's designed for the bike. Well, no shit. Well, of course, no shit. But that doesn't mean just because it's designed for the bike, it is a positive. Again, I know most people are incredibly excited about the bike. I'm just stating I'm not necessarily, because it removes a lot of the core fun elements of exploring worlds for me. I like to explore worlds. What's the point in giving me a cool open world if you're going to treat everything as a chore and then give me QOLs to fix that chore? Because that's why I say I feel like the design's flawed, because I feel like they've gone with this design around the bike. So if you're not on the bike, collecting is a chore. So they've made it super intuitive in the sense of you just fly around and suck stuff up, because why would you want to walk around and collect things anyway? Because the area is not really designed for that. And I suppose that's where like my fundamental issues come with the bike. And then that goes back to where I say that's when it doesn't feel like Wuthering Waves for me, because we're going back to Wuthering Waves for me felt like the exploration and the friction, if you will, less than something like Genshin. But I'm not comparing those two in that regard. You know, it still had friction in exploring, just like Genshin had. But then when you get utility, it starts to remove a bit of that friction, which some people love, which is fine to degrees. But then when it gets seriously powerful and the world design, in my opinion, starts to suffer from it, I feel like exploration as a whole starts to suffer from it then. And that's where I was coming from. I failed to express myself in those regards. I just kind of went, I don't like it because I don't like it. And the bike looks cool, but it doesn't look cool. The bike does look cool on its own, but then when I bring it into the map and the map gets designed the way it's designed, it looks less cool to me then, because it doesn't look like a fun tool to use within the world. And I don't like the look of grappling hook barrel rolls on a bike and side saddling on a bike through the air. I don't think it looks that great. That doesn't mean you can't think it looks great and can't be excited for it. Be excited for it. I don't know what people want me to say there. Like, just because I'm not excited doesn't mean you shouldn't be excited. I've seen so many people saying that. Well, everybody's excited about that. Okay, but that doesn't mean I am. That's why I'm expressing my opinion. And to like people saying, as again, I'm pitting Art Knights against Wuthering Waves. No, I'm fucking not. Like, the Wuthering Waves community does that enough in regards to content creators of pitting Wuthering Waves against other games. And to say otherwise, you know is bullshit, right? I'm not trying to do that. I just make Enfield content, and I used to make Wuthering Waves content, and I'm just commenting on it. and obviously people don't like the comment, but I'm not trying to pit them against each other. I don't care for that, if I'm honest. I'm just here to talk about video games. Again, maybe some of the comments I think probably were poorly worded, specifically because I haven't played the game for a while. But I think the whole idea around level design for me is universal. I don't need to have been playing the last few patches to understand what I like in world design and exploration. And I think a lot of people have misunderstood that, but that's because I expressed it badly. I can dislike the exploration just because it reduces the things I've spoke about, even though you think, well, it's cool, man. I want to ride a bike around fast. Cool. But I kind of want to explore the world they've built for me beyond just zipping around. That's all I was trying to express in that video. That was kind of the main crux of the video. Again, I think I failed when I was talking about it doesn't feel like we were. It doesn't look like we were. Again, that kind of goes back to that image. And I was just thinking Tower of Fantasy. And then I suppose I started to lean into that. Well, it don't feel like we were statements, which was fair. I'll take that back. But it's more around the way it looks like it feels. Now, when it comes out, it might feel much better. So I need to state that as well, right? Again, a lot of people have said, it's not out yet, but you're being critical. How can you do that? We never have that attitude when people are hyper-glazing something that's not out. It's fair to glaze something that's not out, but to be critical is considered a bad show. It's disingenuous, which, okay, all right. I'm positive about lots of things that aren't out, but I guess you can't be negative. Some people are saying that. I do agree. Overall, though, I made bad points, or not so much bad points for me personally. I expressed them poorly. So I just kind of wanted to go over specifically why I have issues with the exploration, and that comes into the bike and the world design. I'm hoping I've got that across in this video with the few points that I made there in regards to friction and traversal and all that sort of stuff, and giving examples of some other games that do a good job of having friction, but also giving utility, but they've got real reasons to do so because they're sandbox games, and this isn't. And I think in non-sandbox games, I want a bit of friction. Otherwise, it is just a big space to move around in. But if it's not a sandbox game, I'm not really doing much other than getting from point A to B. And if there's nothing in between A and B that's enjoyable, I'm not too interested, if I'm honest. Again, I can't speak on certain things. I haven't played the game. And I also want to say, because people have been saying I have an echo chamber of a community. You want to see my Discord? Plenty of people have called me out and said I worded stuff poorly. The video just wasn't it. And I'm cool with that. I don't want an echo chamber. I want critical viewpoints on my content because that's what it's all about. I like talking about video games. I know a lot of CCs see everything as rage baiting. Oh, it's all about views. I actually like talking about video games in general. I've had this channel for years now. Unlike everybody else, I'm not trying to chase the dream of being the next Asmongold or the next Tectone. I just like talking about video games, man. So I look at it a little bit differently in that regard. I couldn't give a fuck about chasing views, and I won't stop talking about stuff in video games I like, no matter how mad it makes people, or even if they see me as the bad takes guy. If I become the next Psyche, if you will. But it's just how I feel, right? And yeah, I don't think it's going to change. Maybe it will when it comes out. But at the moment, I think they're reducing the friction in world building or world design, and I think that's a negative, personally, for me. I like the idea of traversing how we did in 1.0. I kind of like it. And I don't mind gimmicks being added. When the entire region starts to get designed around the gimmick, it's not really a little gimmick utility then, is it? That's the name of the game for that period of time. And I don't know if I want that, personally. But again, my opinion really doesn't matter because I don't play the game, as everybody's told me. But still, that's how I feel anyway. But guys, let me know what you think down below. I don't know if I got across my opinions a little bit more there. And yeah, you'll have to let me know. People were saying as well, just say what you feel, you know, and stop being biased. At the end of the day, I do like Enfield more than Wuthering Waves at the moment. I do like Arc Knights more than Wuthering Waves, but I'm not trying to pit them against each other. There's plenty of games that I still like that I stopped playing. I still like Wuthering Waves. I've just stopped playing it because I'm playing other games, and there'll be other games that I drop that I like now, and I'll probably still like in the future because I'm playing other games. It's just how things go. I'm not one of these people out here that's going to be playing 25 gachas because I can't drop one of them. Like, fuck that. Second, I have more fun on something else. I'm playing something else. I also will still talk on those games as well, because I definitely won't hear the wooer space tell me, well, if you don't play it, you don't get to talk on it, when that's an entire community that argues they've stopped playing Genshin because it's trash, but never shuts the fuck up about it, or is a majority of the wooer community still playing Genshin. I will just add that in there as well. I just thought, you know, that was funny to me. But yeah, I think lots of the criticism in the comment section is totally fair, but I also still stick to my point that the bike itself reduced the interest of exploration, in my opinion. Alright guys, let me know what you think down below. I'll see you in a bit. Cheers.